Whoa, Dad, go, Dad.
Hey y'all, Dave Mopper here. Welcome in. This pod is a compilation of lessons in fatherhood and leadership. I'm using it to explore the path to raising legends, and I'm sharing it all with you. Each episode provides a really raw and unique perspective on fatherhood, and it's what I've come to love about these conversations. There is something for every father who's in growth mode. All right, enjoy the combo. Mr. Jeff Nelligan, welcome to Whoa Dad, Go Dad.
Dave, thank you. A privilege and a pleasure, my friend.
You know, Jeff, it's actually brilliant that we are speaking today because technically you listened to a few of the podcasts, historic podcasts of mine.
Yes.
You're a stranger to me until recently. I feel like I've known you for quite some time now because of the shared analysis and the shared realm of fatherhood. And you reach out, share a little bit about what you're up to, and I'm like, this is the gentleman I need to speak to. So here we are.
Oh, I appreciate it. And you know what really captures me about Whoa Dad, Go Dad is your focus on younger dads, with younger children, not dads who, whose kids maybe have, been launched and everything else. Because, I always, the basis of all the stuff I've been writing about children for all the years of parenting is that 75% of the time we will spend with our kid is over by the time the kid turns age 12. And 90% is over by the time the kid turns 18. So, for every dad listening who's got those younger kids, including you, brother, the clock started yesterday on raising that resilient kid.
Beautiful. And you have 3 young adult men, sons out in the world. And I want to hear details in a moment, but you told me enough that I sense they're out absolutely kicking butt. They're taking names, they're being intentional, and that's all the product of you setting them up. I'm sure they had to take some personal responsibility, but you even probably taught them that, along with a bunch of other critical, life habits and behaviors and so forth. So we're going to get into that. But I think what's really neat about just learning initially about your world is your 3 sons are now doing what they're doing to the degree where you could actually learn from them. So you have your latest book. Is it your latest book or is it a recent?
Yes, sir.
Latest book.
Latest book.
4 lessons from my 3 sons. Did I get it right?
Yes, you did.
What's the essence of the book? What's the takeaway? Why should anyone listen or read this particular book?
Certainly, the full title is 4 Lessons from My 3 Sons: How You Can Raise a Resilient Kid. And the book was the genesis was I just dropped my last kid off from college to college. He was at West Point for a wonderful Beast Barrack summer, and I was driving home and I'm sitting in the backyard with a big old cigar and a bunch of Red Bulls, and I was thinking, now what do I do? I have no games to go to, no school events, no nothing. The other 2 had graduated, were in school and had left school, one of them, and they were out in the world. And the idea was, well, I was one of those parents like the dads listening now whose kids were 3 and 4 and 5, so this is where these kids are at right now. And there's a lesson to be drawn from how they arrived here and what dads need to do, and dads and moms, to get their kids in position. I might add, all 3 of my kids are military officers. 2 are U.S. Navy lieutenants, and the third one, the West Point guy, got a waiver for professional rugby. We'll go back in the service probably by the end of this year as an infantry officer. So that was the genesis of the book. Hey, here's some advice from dads. And the second part I would add is the book is exceedingly short. It's 80 pages. The appendix is a little bit longer. It can be read in 45 minutes. It's loose, it's funny, and it's authentic. And in many places in the book, it's self-deprecatory. That is, I admit my own failings and setbacks, and I admit them to my kids.
Yes, which in and of itself is a lesson that hopefully they gleaned, taking personal responsibility, being accountable for ourselves. We're all fallible. Yeah.
Exactly. Well put.
Yeah, the pursuit of perfection, not perfection. These timeless little idioms, I suppose. Now you've written a number of books, is that right? If
That's
five?
correct. Yeah, um, I wrote a book about my time in politics. My background is I spent a lot of years on Capitol Hill and as a political appointee in Bush 41 and 43, worked on a bunch of national campaigns. Um, and so I wrote a book about politics and how people young guys and gals getting started in politics, that might give them a leg up to have a good solid career.
Hmm.
I wrote a book about the greatest movie ever made, Caddyshack.
Ready for this?
Yeah.
Mr. Murray, Mr. Bill
Oh,
Murray.
Bill, Carl Spackler.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites right there. I got a little reminder to laugh at it all, right? If you
He
can't laugh at it all, then you
he's the star of the book. So yeah, I've been very fortunate to publish a few, independently and have the time to do it. Again, when your three kids are gone, and deployed all over the world, Asia, Middle East, Mediterranean, North Atlantic, Indian Ocean, you have a lot of time on your hands while you're not worrying. So I was lucky to do that.
right off the bat, I'm wondering what is it like? It's one thing to I can imagine my son grows up. He's equipped. We've done our best. He's in say decent shape to go make the most of the world, and we're rooting him on. And he's hitting us up with a phone call from time to time and so forth. That in of itself has to be a little bit anxious because you're like, well, let's see if I did it right or whatever. But you're two at least, and playing rugby is not a necessarily a safe place either. But what's it like to have kids, adults, but kids that are in the danger zone of the world, perhaps potentially from time to time? How do you process that as a father, as a parent?
I like the fact that they've taken on this responsibility because sometimes, not all the time, the responsibilities they've had have been huge.
Mm,
Um, you know, and the lessons that really gave them that responsibility were formed at an early age. And I'll give you an example. It's actually from the book. When the kids were like 7, 6, and 4, I took them to an indoor mall in Washington D.C. on a Saturday. Surging crowds, chaos. And I whipped out my wallet and I gave each kid a $5 bill. And I said, hey guys, each one of you, go get change for this. This is not a race. I'll try to keep an eye on you, but this is a task. You need to be able to, maneuver. And of course, they're delighted to do that and have the responsibility. So they charge off and they come back later. One kid struck out at a few stores. Another kid's got 4 quarters in his pocket. 20 quarters in his pocket, but they've accomplished this task in the midst of, great uncertainty.
mm,
Well, the tests just get harder and harder. You go to a 7-Eleven in a sketchy area and you give a kid a $20 bill and you say, go get us Doritos and Gatorade. But you build them through those tests of resilience where there's in a strange place with strangers and they have to follow through on a task. Well, those are the kind of kids that when they're 24, they're on the bridge of a guided missile destroyer in the Strait of Hormuz. It's night and there's mines all around them and Iranian patrol boats. And the captain of the ship has put my kid in charge of the whole ship, 250 guys to navigate their way out of that. So that sense of responsibility and resilience is formed at that early age because it just every day there's a challenge, or every day there's a test. And soon they get so acclimated to taking on responsibility larger and larger that, as you began the question, they're out there now sometimes in these deployments. I've got a kid deployed right now. And you're glad that they're there because the tests are just getting harder and they're meeting them. And it's great satisfaction for a parent.
beautiful. And you're right. Of course, you're acknowledging the danger, but you're also there. They're equipped, and not just conceptually. They have the skills, the training. You've seen it, ground tested it, and everything. So,
Yeah.
and the function that they're serving in our world perhaps has more gravitas than maybe anything, right? They're there to protect and to serve the Constitution, our freedoms, the world, peace, and
Yeah.
So
It's
there's
kind of
something
bonus,
special with that.
and every kid, every son and daughter coming out of college has a certain job that, tests them responsibility wise. You can be the manager of an AutoZone, and let me tell you, that's a hell of a lot of responsibility. Or you could work the trading desk at Goldman Sachs, and a hell of a lot of responsibility. So it's not just guys on an aircraft carrier or guided missile destroyer. It's every kid who comes out and then starts to assume that responsibility. Hey, I'm in charge of a store, an AutoZone that's doing, 12K and, net a day, and I got 5 people to supervise, and I got inventory and shipments and customers. That's a tremendous amount of responsibility. So it doesn't have to be on, a big ship. It can be in any place that we walk around in our daily civic life.
Indeed. The word you said that struck me was acclimated, because are they acclimated to notable responsibility, you might say, and uncertainty and chaos, where the world is going to serve that up inevitably. That's
Oh,
what the world
yes.
is. But what I heard
Yes.
from you, and I'm wondering if you have a sense, because I know we'll get into some interesting statistics here in a second. Maybe you have this statistic nailed down. How many parents proactively create conditions to acclimate versus everyone's just reacting, including the parents? They're constantly reacting to, hardship versus
Yeah.
consciously putting them in these little tests, micro hardships to sculpt and formulate and build fortitude and resilience. Like, what is the breakdown in your sense of the current parent mindset? We want to protect them from hardship, or the Nelligan way, go get in that mix right now. Go get in that
Yeah.
mess and report back to me, right? So what's the breakdown you're saying, if you had to guess?
Well, I would probably say it's probably 90-10, because we even have, you know, uh, nicknames for the parents that always enable the
Oh,
snowplow parent, the helicopter parent, um, and then maybe there's the 10%, maybe hopefully it's 20% of the Nelligan way, because you began this by saying it. The world is chaos every day. Those were your words. You're exactly right. Every day is a setback. No one gets a free ride. And the sooner you know that you're not going to get a free ride, and know that there's going to be these setbacks and obstacles, and that you can either get over them or get around them, the better off you are, because they're never going to end. They can start at 4 years old trying to get change for a $5 bill in a mall, or they can be on the high seas at night, in the Persian Gulf. But so I would hope, we've got that we build a group of parents, dads, moms, who see that and give those kids challenges early on and let them fail or succeed.
mm. A little bit of both will be rewarding for them.
Oh yeah, no kid's ever going to succeed at all of it. In fact, some of the best lessons are taught by failure,
Indeed.
because that's the way life works out. Even in the book, all the failures that I had, that I communicated to them, I said, look, this is the way it's going to be. You can either delude yourself, dissolve into self-pity, or drive on. I had this, when I was in basic training at Fort Benning for infantry, I had this big, black, badass combat veteran drill sergeant. And he says, there's only 3 things in life when you run into an obstacle: assess, adapt, advance. And, that just has stayed with me my entire life from being a young guy. So that kind of is the answer to your question about the eternal chaos of the world.
Well, and I think that's so useful on an individual level and as a community and as a nation and maybe as a world. But let's stay at the nation level. Like, somehow we're at this place in time where, and I wonder if there's this term. I was actually doing some homework trying to figure out if there's a term for this, where it's like the modern day fallacy, where we think that because we live in this time and it's our firsthand experience and it's civilized and so advanced, that the world's old ways, combat, fighting, uh, different parties vying for various interests, that's like no longer the reality of things. But that's just not the case. And so if we can build kids, build resilience in our kids early on for their individual sake, there's also this macro effect that makes us as a country uh, robust and
Yeah.
vigorous. And I suppose, what's your assessment of our current mindset, and then maybe even actionable behaviors. How strong are we in mind, body, and spirit as a country if the individual isn't robust? Your sons are the exception. I know a lot of guys that are the exception, but I also see
Right.
everybody wanting to be soft, thinking that softness is somehow this virtue, and it's like softness by itself is actually weakness. Strength with awareness and the ability to be soft from time to time, that's power, and authentic power, good power, so to speak. But that's not. I'm not sure what the breakdown is, but the world's a bunch of softies complaining, entitled. It's like, so. What's your assessment of the landscape of the current generation and the generation to come? Are we are we going to have what it takes?
Yeah, I like the analogy soft because we early on, even when my kids were young, we would we would use that, and not because they were just some hard asses at 6 years old, um, but because because we were we understood things very well. I mean, if you're giving kids tests all the time, they tend to grow up pretty fast, and they grow up faster when they fail them. So that softness is there. I like the enabling, again, we go back to the snowplow parent, the helicopter parent. Um, you know, we have now a whole generation, the Gen Z, and all three of my kids are in it. My eldest is right on the edge, middle one's right there, youngest right there. And we always talk about, and just as you have, the anecdotal observations we all have about the younger generation and what the hell their parents did with them. But beyond that, there are statistics that just show it out, and I'm just going to run through a few. Gen Z, first of all, is about 71 million kids. It's individuals. They're not kids anymore. Some are young, they're born in 96, 97. Last one's like 2012. But you get 71 million. 45% of 30-year-olds still live at home. That's half the population of 18 to 32 live at home with their parents. 40% of that generation has already a chronic condition. 40%. And that's only going to rise higher. 1/3 of them, this is according to Pew last year, feel hopeless, depressed, or kind of despairing. 56% of those youths, 56, are obese or overweight. And 48% say they're online almost constantly. These are all Pew polls, the gold standard in polling. So, and then you say, well, you're taking a whole generation. What about those that have now entered what we would call adulthood? Now we have a term called emerging adulthood, which is, that's appalling. You're an adult or you're not an adult. If you're emerging, you've got a big problem already.
You're right.
But when they enter the workforce, hiring managers, two different surveys, Wallet Hub and Forbes, 6 out of 10 Gen Zs hired are fired within the first year. 40% are fired within the first 2 months from their first job. 2/3 of the hiring managers say the Gen Z are unprepared for the workforce. Now, remember, this survey is like 2,500 hiring managers at all levels. And here's the one that just always brings back to me just the maybe the hopelessness itself. Approximately 1 out of 3 new Gen Z on their first job with a hiring manager bring their parents. So we can talk about the anecdotes all day, and we have plenty of them, okay? And intergenerational snark is not new. It goes back to Aristotle and Plato.
Good point.
But the fact is, they didn't have surveys, back then. Today we do, and this is the state of a great portion of this generation. This can't be sustained. So I don't know what you do to change that. But it's an indication of how you began this question of this softness that you see. You're right. It's there. It's not just what you see, it's borne out by the numbers.
Mm-hmm. So many stats. I wanted to just go off on tangents with you, but the thing that I'm struck by, first of all, is like I have to put my blinker on to merge into the adult lane. Like,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if, I don't want to just point fingers. I'm like, did I fully accept my adult responsibilities? When I had a million jobs in high school and in college. I put myself through college, all this. So I'm pretty sure that I didn't have to put a blinker on. But it's funny, this conversation is subtly or I don't know, it's pretty darn related to a recent discussion I had with someone in the men's space talking about rites of passage. There are no rites of passage in our world
No,
culturally.
no.
Nothing consistent. Granted, if you go to a military program, they're putting you through a rite of passage by design, of course. But there's nothing around 13, 14, 15 that our culture does compared to historic cultures where the men took the kid out of the house and maybe put him into a test in the wilderness, right? These are
Right.
pretty big generalizations, but it's stuff like this, right? And then they had to go accomplish some sort of goal and overcome discomfort and then find their way back to the men. And then there was a bit of a ritual, an acknowledgement, maybe a gift of some sort to recognize the shift that you've gone through. Like that just doesn't happen. So we're hoping that we raise kids that are capable adults, but we're doing nothing but crossing our fingers as a
Yeah,
society.
that's correct. I like, the way you put the the lack of discomfort and the challenge that a kid's got to face for you, this rite of passage of which you speak. I will tell you that I think that one of the main drivers behind all this, and this is something I've talked about for years, is the saturation of digital media. I noted in one of the stats that 48% of Gen Z finds themselves online all the day. An average between 10 and 18 is 8 hours and 47 minutes on a device, and that doesn't include homework. Um, so if you're passively taking in the culture 9 hours a day, you've got a problem. And that means what could you have spent that 9 hours doing other than looking at a screen? Well, there's plenty of things. Uh, and the numbers, even for 3 to 5 years old, is around 110 minutes a day on a screen. So, and books by guys much wiser than myself, including the one that's really got a lot of attention, Dr. Jonathan Haidt's Anxious Generation,
Mm-hmm.
uh, have really delved into, again, with stats, empirical, not just anecdotes, about what the effect of oversaturation of digital social media has done to kids, and really mentally, physically, and socially has harmed them. So I think that is the starting point for any parent, like all the young dads listening right now. The starting point is you get control of that device immediately. And hopefully your kid doesn't have a device yet. My kids didn't get a phone until the end of 11th grade. And then when they did, we had a contest. Every day, whoever came home with most charge in the phone got $5.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant that their dependence upon it, their use of it, just diminished rapidly because they wanted the $5. Um, but I think once a parent can seize control of that device, and I mean, I'm all for shock treatment. I mean, I advocate you just yank it out of their hand and say, look, you're this is a new day, and I'm not. And the parent then says, I'm not going to use this phone in your presence. If I might have to use it for work, but you sure as heck don't need a phone for school. And of course, the pushback's going to be where Billy and Johnny have them. I heard that pushback, and I said, well, let's celebrate Billy and Johnny. That's great. You're not getting one. And when you got it in 11th grade, it was use it as sparingly as you need to. Um, so I think that can be one of the great reasons for, to go back to your term, this age of softness, because a kid looking, there's a reason 6 out of 10 kids in Gen Z are overweight or obese. It's because they've been looking at a phone for 9 hours a day and eating.
Mm.
Okay. So there there are ways to combat this softness. And if you're a dad with young kids, that's the first place to start.
Well, we've been lured as a society into a passive, soft
Yeah. Yeah.
approach to things. And
Yeah.
yes, it's taking energy for you to consume content, and there's some activity or action associated with it, but it is a very passive thing. And then it strikes me there's the consumer and producer as two sides of the coin. Like, are we raising consumers or are we raising producers? Are we raising people to just apathetically ingest whatever they're told?
Right.
And what's
Right.
what's what's very easy to consume, what's convenient, somehow convenience is everywhere in our society, but it's killing us, you
Yes.
know? And so part of me was thinking, yeah, softness, passiveness, apathy. And we started off a bit thinking about strength as like physical force of nature, military as the opposite because of your kids. But part of me just recognizes, yes, I want to raise like I want to raise a lethal young man who's also really kind and graceful. But I want him to be powerful. I'll admit that. But I recognize as you're saying all this, what we're really determining is, will they be consumers or will they be producers? Are we raising people to be productive, to take agency over the
Right.
one life that they get, right? And all of their skills and talents in the face of adversity, by the way, still. But are we teaching them to, even almost especially in the face of adversity, being resourceful, tapping into their imagination, tapping into how might we accomplish this versus, the opposite of we can't, right? So it's like this idea of productive humans versus passive humans. Now that we're kind of sorting through this, like that's this choice we get as parents. Are we going to equip them to be highly productive, or are they going to be passive? And this comes, gosh, I'm just riffing. I'm on a tear here, but it reminds me of, the idea of being a man in the arena or in the just one of the fans, just watching
Right.
it. You got to
Yeah.
get in the game. Are we raising kids that can actually play the game? And it turns out uh, it's still very possible to do that, but the conditions of the world are, it's very enticing to be apathetic, passive, soft, and trust that everyone's going to give you what you need. It's
Right. And that's, I like the arena analogy. That's Theodore Roosevelt's old famous man in the arena. And I memorized that when I was in junior high because I loved it so much, and my kids are aware of it even today. Uh, but I think in this world that you say that is, and I would have to agree, that is built on passiveness and getting along, that's why I used, the moniker shock treatment. And if guys reading the book are going to be, outraged because I would say something no other dad would say. And I would say it in front of people, kids, parents, because someone has to stand up and say, stop. And so the things that I would say were so outrageous, but my kids got it, even at young age. If we saw, I'll never forget coming from a football game when they were really young, youth football. Back then there was no flag football. And there was a guy walking ahead, kid walking ahead 10 feet of hair in front of his parents. His dad was carrying his bag, and his mom was carrying his helmet. And he's
mm,
texting furiously on his phone. And I stopped my guys as we were walking towards the parking lot, and I said, "Don't ever be like that jackass." And all these parents around me started laughing, and all the kids did. And it was just like, oh my goodness, he said what we all wanted to say. Now that happened, those kind of interactions happened hundreds of times where I said, we're going to point out the good, the bad, and the inspirational.
mm,
And if I saw like a guy opening a door for seniors, I say, that's what you want to be like, man. Or if you saw a talkative parent engaging shy parents in a conversation, getting them going, I'd say, you want to be that guy, that's getting everyone involved. So it was these outrageous quotes and statements all the time to say, that's the world. And you can either, that's good that you should be like that portion of the world, or I never want you like that portion of the world. And people reading the book are going to see it. And the validation, of course, is these three kids, and I will say up front, 90% of how they turned out is because of their mom. I get like 10% for being a major league nag. But the times we were around each other, I was very explicit in pointing out the good and the bad and the inspirational. And in this soft world that you're talking about, that's what sometimes you have to do. You have to be abrupt. And as I said earlier, outrageous.
Yeah, I mean the world's been it's like covertly co-opted, and the only option is to be really brash and frank
Right.
and
Right.
in your face. We
Yeah.
just don't have time. And I'm thinking we've established the complications and the problem nicely, and some of these implications have been implied, but it's like we're not going to be physically robust as a country if we stay on this path. We're not going to be productive. We're not going to be innovative. We won't come up with, solutions to the world's biggest problems if we don't have all this. We're not going to be healthy, in fact.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
So there's all these consequences that we're already experiencing them. They're only going to get worse.
Right. You just heard the stats for one generation. 71 million kids, and half of them have 40% have you have a chronic condition before you're 30.
Hmm.
What the heck's going on here? My gosh, that number's only going to rise. So are the overweight and obesity. So are the persistent thoughts of hopelessness. None
Mm-hmm.
of this is on a downward curve. That what's shocking is it's happened so fast to so many people who are so young. Yeah.
Right, we should all be just in awe of this, and then take a moment to just wallow in it, but not no, we don't have time to wallow in it. I'm wondering now.
Or
Okay.
or counterintuitively, if all the dads listening and you raise your kids a certain way, they're in the best position possible because they're entering a cohort of people, the majority of whom will never be competitive at anything. Now, I don't think that I've said it, but I don't want that to happen because that means, you know, you've got a barely functioning 71 million people. But
Mm-hmm.
see, there's the other part of it. The
Mm-hmm.
dads the dads and moms whose sons and daughters really can achieve, their path is much easier because there are so fewer people in front of them that they have to compete with.
Man, think about
It's
that.
a
Just
Yeah,
as a mantra, just we get to raise competitors. If
right.
if we have the intentionality, the courage, perhaps the guidebook, some practical things we might need, but we get to raise competitors. What's the opposite? Competitors, I said it was about passivity versus being productive, but I kind of like competitors, winners. So I don't want to say losers, but
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, it's either competitors or
I don't know. I mean, you could just say functioners,
right.
people that just function day to day on a pretty low plane,
Yeah.
pretty low level. But
It's
I
it,
mean, it's a hell of a thing to say, and I feel bad saying it, but that's just the stark fact.
well,
You
is
know,
it potentially competitors or conformists?
yeah, conforming to the softness in society that you see. Yeah, conforming to that. Um, so, but the book itself, there's eternal values work. And you were saying at the beginning, well, this is our present society thinks that everything that came past really doesn't have a place because everything's so different and modern and science is advanced us so far. I mean, I agree, I agree that I think that's part of every generation. But this one, it's acute. But the eternal values, and the book is organized this way, are, for my kids, it was personal courtesy and conduct. It
Hmm.
was gaining confidence. It was that resilience in adversity and ambition. And I figured those are just four things you could teach kids about and give them enough examples so that by the time they're 10, they know exactly what needs to be done.
Hmm.
And so, that's what I'm saying to younger dads who are listening, that if you just focus on the four things and ways to get those, everything else is going to flow from that. And, I was lucky. I'm very fortunate to have these three blessed kids, but they just didn't spring up out of nowhere. And yeah, they've had some, hard failures. They've had setbacks, but they just kept driving on. The setbacks were just another reason to, come back harder.
Indeed. So the first one is, let's just kind of maybe walk through them just a touch.
Sure.
Personal courtesy. I really like just straightforward kindness. Is that what that is? What would?
Oh yeah, personal courtesy and conduct. Kindness, looking an adult in the eye, shaking their hand, and saying, "Hey, Mr. Momper, how are you?" Wearing presentable clothing, not ever uttering a vulgarity, being kind, engaging the other people, your peers, in conversation rather than listening rather than talking.
Hmm.
The second one was confidence. How do you build confidence? Well, you're in a mall. Here's $5 bills. When they were 8 years old, we'd go to an airport and I'd hand the kid paperwork and say, "Go get us 4 boarding passes or 5 boarding passes, and we'll be right here." And the kid's just standing with this paperwork, and I said, "Go over there and start talking to somebody, you know, because we're not leaving unless you get those boarding passes."
Hmm.
Or we'd be, out somewhere in the middle of a restaurant, and I point to the 5-year-old and say, "You're going to memorize all our orders and tell the waiter what we want."
Hmm.
And so, you put kids on the spot like this, they've got to respond. And, it works. I mean, that same kid at 5 years old who is memorizing an entire order, suddenly he's with a birthday party with these parents who are totally irresponsible, and they leave 3 of the 17 kids they brought to the mall to a movie in the food court, one of whom is my kid. And other kids start bawling when they realize they're all alone. My kid says, "Wait a minute. My dad once told me at a college football game, if you get lost, you can't see anything because you're so short. So look for that guy or that woman with a stripe running down their pants, and that's a security guard, and go up and, grab them by the leg." So that's what they did. He told the 2 kids who finally got their act together. And about 5 minutes later, they saw a security guard, ran over, hooked up with the parents. But the point was, it's like my kid in the Strait of Hormuz. Kids that are built a certain way are not going to panic. They're going to think of a way out of something or a way around it. So that's that idea of confidence and resilience. And of course, ambition, sometimes you have to bring it in hot, really hot, like I did. The section on ambition, I got absolute raked over the coals for some of it because it wasn't pretty. And like my my eldest son at, beginning of 10th grade said, "Dad, I really think I want to be a teacher and a coach." And I'm thinking, well, that's great, okay. And I didn't say another word. And then about 2 weeks later, we're all in the car coming home from a lax game. And I said, and I drove him to a very, very, not nice part of the county. And we drove up and down these streets, and there's cars on blocks, and homes are full of debris, the front yards. Some things are, coming apart. There's garbage everywhere. Kids are, there's men sitting on the street corners, at the corner with smoking and pulling, 40s. And they go, why are we here? And they're whispering, they're terrified. The windows are rolled up. "Why are we here, Dad?" And I said, "Because if you want to become a teacher, you'll be lucky to rent one of these shacks." And he just looked at me and I said, "You're used to this lifestyle that's unbelievable. You go to a private school, you have everything that you need and everything that you want. You have this huge neighborhood and this huge yard and home that we've worked like dogs to get you guys. So this is what you're going to have, because teachers, alas, too bad, it's unfortunate, don't make very much. And you're going to be 35 and sitting in one of these neighborhoods going, oh no." And he could have said, "Oh, I want to be a sociologist," or "I want to be, an archaeologist or something." But he said teacher. Now I took total heat for that. And it wasn't because it was bad. I mean, my parents were teachers. My brother, my sister were teachers. I mean, I know teachers pretty well. The teachers they had at their school were phenomenal. But that's the thing about ambition. If you don't nip that kind of wild idea out there in the beginning, then that's what they're going to work and seek for. And then when they get to the end, they're going to say, "What the hell was I thinking?" Now, I've heard the same story from parents who say, "My kid says he wants to be a policeman," Or my kid wants to go in the Army. And I said, no, 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 you can't do that. You know, that's not good. You can't be a policeman. You can't be in the Army. So it's not just, I wasn't picking on teachers. I was picking on a lifestyle
Mm.
and income. So you have to be, as a dad, be able to make those tough decisions when they're young. Otherwise, you know, how many people get out of college today who say, I want to be a graphic artist. I want to be, you know, I want to do slam poetry. I'm going to, you know, be a sculptor. What in the hell are you thinking?
Right.
You know, come on. So I get very jacked up about it, but it's just part of that whole idea of having that lifetime vision and ambition and melding all those other qualities into it.
But we, as adults, we can see the value of ambition with without rhetoric, right?
Right.
We can appreciate it beyond the rhetoric because of experience and wherever we're at and all the hard work and grit you put forth to get the big house and the big yard and all that. Uh,
Yeah.
and as you were saying, you're not necessarily judging a teacher, a police
No,
officer, an
not at
army,
all.
but when I'm kind of taken away, I'm like, there will come a time where my son Leo starts saying he wants to be this or that or X or Y. And my duty or my job in those moments is, of course, let his imagination run, especially early on, right? But
Yeah.
once we're getting to the practical years, the question that I think is the right question, this is what I want to ask you your opinion of. To really, you want them to take their own agency. You don't want them not being a
Yeah.
teacher because dad said teachers are
Right.
inappropriate, so to speak. But you still, so is there a question that's something like, what is the best use of your full potential? What is the best
Right.
use of your full potential? And is that the best use of your full potential and impact, your full potential and impact, perhaps? And I feel like that's a guiding litmus test for ourselves and for our kids to just say, hey, that you would probably be a great teacher. You probably do really well, and the community would benefit from you. But you would be a great police officer. But you would. Is that the best use of your full potential and impact, or is there
Right.
something bigger that you can be on the lookout for? Because I'm just trying to
Right.
think about, you don't want to stifle their desires. You want to yes and them. You want to say, if you think you could be a great teacher, imagine being an incredible author of, 10
Right.
books on what's your favorite topic? And okay, interesting. What's the path to get to there? Right?
Right.
So
And
just
that's
helping
that.
them see the bigger
Right.
idea.
Right. And that's the guidance of a parent. And then a parent who can pull that off is one that has spent a lot of time with the kid and can guide the kid because the kid's talking to him or her, parent, your mom or dad, uh, to make those right decisions. You know, I mean, I sound pretty crass saying, well, you'll never make enough money. That sounds awful, right? No, it doesn't, because there's too many people at age 35 who look around and say, I'm living in an apartment, I have government health care, and I'm barely making enough for groceries. Okay. Now, that's great. You wanted to be a slam poet or a graphic artist, but here's the reality is tough. And so you've got to have that ability to say to a kid, you know, maybe you start selling, you know, something after high school or college or whatever you decide to do. Maybe you want to trade. Maybe you want to go into something that's finance or something like that, because that parent knows vividly. I mean, I knew it. There's, you know, politics, my old career is erratic as hell. You know, I got fired from like 4 jobs because of elections going south.
Mm.
So you want that kid to have that stability. And that stability is found in certain professions. In other professions, it's not found. And so you have to have that, you know, hard conversation with the kid. Plus, it's the whole idea is the kid built to go to college. Not every kid is. And that's just the way it was. Mine were, but there's plenty of kids who don't go to college and they're making a lot more than my kids are making right now. I will tell you that, a lot more. HVAC, electronics, plumbing, you name it, a skill, a real trade.
Yeah, the
Um,
trades.
and they're very happy. They're as happy as my kids. So then, you know, so you have that guidance of what you do after high school. Is it college? Is it trades? and, sitting down with your kid and saying, what's the best? What's the best for you? We want you to do this, and we want something that's going to sustain you for a long time. Um, I just hear I hear about from too many parents, their kid, is like in the second year of college and they don't know what they want to do, or they're their fourth year and they've majored in anthropology or sociology or something. And it's like, how do you convert that into something that's really going to give you the long-term sustainability that you need? It's rough, but that's why you're a parent. You got to make those tough calls all the time.
Indeed. Right. And that's what the the leadership component of being a good parent involves,
Yeah.
right? Versus just being their partner or guide. You actually have to be a leader for them at times.
Right. In fact, probably the most gripping story in the whole book is we were used to being in the DC area. That's where we were. And we would drive by these huge, massive office buildings all over the place, even massive office buildings in office parks in the suburbs. And they were just a ubiquitous part of the landscape. And we drive by them, the steel and the iron and the glass and the bricks and the whole thing. And one day we're driving in DC and I pointed to one building. I said, up there on the seventh floor, there's a guy sitting at a desk in front of a computer monitor. And, he got out of school and, he had a great run, man. He good grades, good athlete, did this and that. And he was going to be somebody, he's going to be a jet pilot, or he's going to sail around the world, or own a bunch of franchise restaurants, or get into real estate. But instead, he's sitting up there in that office, and on his desk is a mug like you made me in second grade. And there's a picture of his family. But he's looking at that screen and he's saying, what the hell am I doing here? And I said, that guy's your dad. So you got to get a lot farther than I did. And they were in shock for 30 minutes. But see, that's the tough times. Those are the tough calls that dad has to make. Yeah, that guy's your dad, man. He didn't make it as far. You need to make it a lot farther than me. So those kind of things are the tough conversations that dads have to have. And they have to have them with, at your age and, the listeners' age, when these kids are young and can be formed.
Indeed. Thinking through this a bit, I mean, you've got three kids successfully equipped right now. You personally, you've written some books, you've had a storied career, seen some of the places you've interviewed, getting interviewed by, top quality humans across the country and telling important stories. If you could go back and adjust one or two things, where did you feel like, I could have done that fatherhood thing better there and there? Were there such a place?
I've never been a kind of a rear view mirror kind of guy. I felt like everything fell into place. I mean, there were times where, you're thinking, hey, man, did I make the right call on this? Did I give him the right advice? Whatever. The biggest thing with dads your age, when I was your age, and dads listening is the engagement, spending time with kids. I mean, I probably went to, and this is no lie. I mean, I had three kids. They played three sports throughout the year, and they played summer ball, and they were very, very good at lacrosse, and football. I probably went to like 2,700 games in my lifetime, 2,700 different games. And when I say went, I mean I was there. My fanny parked in the bleachers or walking around the sidelines. So that engagement factor of being there. So I could say, well, I wasn't there for my kids, but I really was. But I don't really have anything because I just figured, the theory of causality, everything locked into place, even with the upsets. And like I said, sometimes I lost my job and I was unemployed, and I would tell the guys, hey, man, you know, we're going to have a rough couple months here because the old man's got to find something.
Mm.
And they had ups and downs too in school and on the fields. But I don't think I would go back and change a thing just because it seemed to all fit into place, like some big machine with the gears, and they all came together for each kid, just like that. So
Yeah,
maybe
indeed.
that's a lame answer, brother. I don't know.
No, I mean, I like that you're not wallowing in some sort of regret in a way, and that
Yeah.
when you do look back, if you put forth a good intention and good faith, and you're consistent, and these are like the laws of the universe in a way, but
Yeah.
then you're gonna end up reaping what you sow, I suppose. Your harvest will be fruitful, and here you are in a way. So I suppose let's get tactical then. I
Yeah.
think we've established the landscape and the problem scape nicely. A lot of consequences if we don't wrangle this as a society. Um, and even the role, maybe talk to me a touch on this, the perception that our society holds about fathers and fatherhood. Do you feel like that explains some of the situation we're in? The the role seems like the greatest lever point to me when I'm looking at my world and our world. I'm like, I think it does take, both parents. It takes men and women solving problems, but I just see the father figure. If it really came into its own, it the ripple effect it has on the
Right.
rest of the world is amazing. So, what's your sense of that as a function of all of this?
Sure. The phrase that's been kicking around for at least a decade, toxic masculinity. And, just the badass in life is just a bad person rather than the guy who can stand up, follow through, be resolute, fortitude, strength, inner and outer, religious, not secular. Um, so that's a phrase that needs to be buried. And I think the second thing is the victimology syndrome.
Mm,
Everyone is a victim. The self-pity factor in this country is at 11. And right along next at 10 and a half is self-obsession.
mm,
So those three things, toxic masculinity, the self-obsession, and the self-pity, they're rampant. Um, in terms of three, I'll tell you three actionable items that any dad can do, how to kind of fight back is number one is, what I mentioned, in mid-show was you got to get control of that device. And I on my website, in fact, my most recent blog was about the efficacy of the social media contract. Sitting down with your kid, if he's got a phone or if she's got a phone, or if they don't, other screens, and you sit down with the social media contract and you say, we're both going to sign this, and there's going to be consequences for when we fall arrears of the rules. And the rules apply to your old man and your mom and dad as well as to you. So then you really can seize control of the culture which is spewing forth from these devices, which I think the culture obviously magnifies the three things I mentioned: self-obsession, self-pity, the toxic masculinity being bad. Those, it magnifies that. So you get a hold on their device, and you cut down the number of hours they're on it. At the same time, what you're doing is expanding the number of hours you can spend with your kid.
mm,
The second thing that I did with my guys is every evening, or most evenings every week, after dinner, we'd walk around the neighborhood for half an hour. Just us. Maybe I'd have two kids, maybe I'd have one, maybe I'd have three. And we would just sit there and I'd say, okay, what was hot and what was not today? I'll tell you what happened with me. And that's what we did. Just enjoyed the natural outdoors and just chatted. Um, the third thing that we did is we read books together. When
mm,
they couldn't read, I read it to them. When they could read, we'd sit side by side on the couch. They'd have theirs and I'd have mine, and we'd sit there for at least 30 minutes. And that was it. Nothing said. And when the time was up, all right, Dad, I got to go do this. I've got to go do homework or whatever. But that 30 minutes was essential to them growing up. And they're still big readers. I mean, my youngest kid, my middle kid, he's a recruiter now in Cincinnati. He did 4 years at sea, deployed everywhere, had to do shore duty, but he came in and we went out to lunch. And then he says, you know what we're going to do right now? And I said, I know what we're going to do. Off to the bookstore, because that's what we did every Saturday.
mm,
We went off to the bookstore. I spent a fortune on books, but we went to the bookstore and the kid's, he's a Naval Academy grad. You know, he's been on 4 different guided missile destroyers. He's a big guy, big dog. And we're sitting there in the bookstore and we come out with like $200 worth of books.
mm.
I mean, that's what we did every Saturday. So that those kind of three things are ways to start right tonight, right today, to say, hey, we're getting control of your life, and we're going to build these qualities slowly, but we're going to start this way. And it all be, getting to know your kid better. And those three things will do it.
Well, it sounds like if there was maybe this is the name of the chapter, maybe not, but rituals, crafting,
Yeah.
choosing and crafting rituals. And
Right.
it has me thinking, we read to Leo. In fact, he loves reading to himself. It's the, cardboard picture books, but
You
he'll see,
bet. Yeah.
he'll see a bird and he'll make the sound of a bird or a cow and he'll say the names out loud. So
Yes.
he's literally reading to himself. It's pretty spectacular. But so we have rituals in a sense, but they're not as formalized. So now I'm going, well, what rituals will we create or can we create now? And what rituals will we create in the
Yeah.
future to support these different values we have and these different desired outcomes we have? But rituals as a consistent
Oh, you
mechanism
bet.
to just embed it in our ways is going to
Yeah.
be clutch.
Yeah. Like I said, the ritual of going to the bookstore. Here's
That's
a 28, here's a 28-year-old kid, been around the world several times, led, hundreds of men and women. And they goes, "Look, you know what we're going to do now, old man?" I said, "Damn right we are. Here we
love it.
go. Borders books."
That's cool. That's such a treat. I just kind of basking in that moment for a second, thinking about what that must be like to have your kid, you know, just call on you or call on the moment for the thing that you've built together. And you're like, yes, yes. I don't even, it's just who we are now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got to feel a certain way, a special way for you. So
Yeah. It's great. And but it's like I said, it's part of a ritual, it's been a
yes, indeed.
ritual for 20, 25 years with this kid. So yeah.
Special. So, Mr. Nelligan, one final big question to wrap us up.
Yes, sir.
Put a bow on a really thoughtful question or a really thoughtful conversation. So the question is, the prompt is, I want you to take a couple breaths as I'm saying this.
Okay.
Picture us 30 years in the future, 40 years, 50 years in the future. You've got your three sons sitting around a campfire without you. You're nowhere in the realm. Who knows what's going on in your world? You're not there, but they're sitting around waxing philosophically about their father, and they're telling tales of the man you are and were. What are the three things you hope you're known for? Out of all the possible things, we've heard a lot of great stuff. What do you hope you're known for? If there's only three, what do they sound like coming out of your son's mouths?
Oh, number one, they say, man, he was a funny old bastard.
Okay,
He
all
was
right.
always loose. He was always humorous and,
Yes.
upbeat.
Yes.
Um, I think the second thing they'd say is, he had an answer during those times when we didn't have an answer.
Hmm.
Um, and even today, they ask me for advice about different things, professional, whatever. It's not advice. I know they've already made the decision. They're just verifying it kind of with the old man. The third thing they'll say is he never gave up. I mean, life wasn't easy, back in the day. And like I said, jobs lost, schools, all the games, the big losses, personal and sports wise, professionally. So I think they'd say those three things. I will tell you that I gave him a copy of the book we've been speaking about, Four Lessons from My Three Sons, before I even published it. I gave it to all three of them. I said, okay, guys, here you go. What did I get wrong? And they all got back to me within 2 days. And they said, you know what, Dad? This pretty much covers it.
Hmm.
You know, there wasn't a thing in that book that I got wrong. It wasn't just some fantasy in my own mind that, oh, I'm going to look so good and these guys are going to be great. Um, so, they their childhood was kind of validated by that book because they said, yeah, you pretty much got all of it here. And I will say two other thing is the book is not some brag job about my guys. My three sons a description of them takes up exactly 110 words. It's the last page of the book. There's nothing in there talking about where they went to school and all the great deployments and all their awards. There's nothing in there like that. As I said, 110 words for all three. That's 35 words a kid.
Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah, right. 35 words a kid for what they've done. So it's not that kind of book at all.
So it sounds like it's a book worth reading. It's the fundamentals, timeless fundamentals of raising resilient kiddos. I assume it's on Amazon,
It sure is. And it's on my website,
on your website.
nelliganbooks.com. And it's also funny as hell. Any dad reading it's going to go, oh, man, I've been in this position before. It's pretty loose.
Well, Mr. Nelligan, thank you for your time. Thank you for your service, your kids' service, and pouring your heart out in this conversation. We have a shared affinity for the role of fatherhood. We have a shared mission to equip dads with the skills they need and the awareness, because perhaps we have it in ourselves, by the way, right? The awareness of what it takes to take on the ultimate role. And I just thank you so much. And I'll catch you on the next Whoa Dad, Go Dad.
Well, Dave, I thank you. And I'm telling you, what you're doing now for dads is intangibly priceless, because you're helping these guys cope. And I did it, and you're the guy to carry that torch forward. So thanks for having me.
Indeed. Thanks, sir. See you next time.
All right.
There you have it. You know, I believe the world is calling on us as fathers to step up and be stewards and shepherds of those around us. The times are interesting, and they are demanding more out of us than perhaps we once realized. It's because of that I want to celebrate and honor the ultimate role of fatherhood and set up dads for maximum impact. So thanks for being here. Don't forget to subscribe so you can catch the coming episodes. And above all, share this episode with a father you admire. See you on the next one.
Whoa, Dad, go, Dad, here we go now. Oh, yeah, the ultimate roll now. Oh, yeah, here we go now. Whoa,